Welcome, everybody. I want to say a massive thank you to everybody attending the webinar today for joining us in your busy schedules to hear about why the UK is winning back global clinical trials and why it's now an attractive place to run your clinical trials. I'm Stuart Young. I'm Chief Executive Panthera Biopartners. We're hosting today's webinar. We've got three fantastic speakers. Before I introduce them, just a little housekeeping. I'd ask everyone if you can put any questions that you may have for our speakers into the Q&A within Zoom. We'll hear from all the speakers first, and then I'll redirect those questions afterwards. But we really like it to be a really interactive session. So the more questions we can have for the panel, I think we'll hear from their insights after the session as well. If we don't get to any questions today, there'll be an opportunity for us to respond to those after the session. But please keep them flowing, and thank you for your contribution interactions. Coming to the speakers, I think from a Panthera perspective, we've seen a real increase in appetite for the UK to take part in trials, particularly those in community settings where I think we perform really well. That's partly because of some fantastic work being done at the MHRA over recent years. Obviously, the UK has become much more attractive in some areas. Speaking on that particular topic today will be Professor Andrea Manfrin. After Professor Manfrin, Gráinne Burley from Parexel will be joining us, and then our very own Amy Barrett will also be there. And between the three of them, I think covering a really wide range of areas across the UK's clinical trial landscape. So we'll have short presentations from each of the panelists on the state of the nation right now, and then hopefully have that time for the Q&A after. Up first, I'm delighted to announce Professor Andrea Manfrin. Andrea has a long background in pharmacy practice and industry before taking on his current role as Deputy Director of Clinical Investigations and Trials at the MHRA. Andrea has been really influential in enabling greater visibility and driving success within the MHRA, particularly efficiencies in submission approval timelines. So I'm pleased to see that the continued energy is there, and I invite now Andrea to share a little bit more with you on what's going on right now within the MHRA. So Andrea, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you everybody for having me today. It's a real privilege. So my name is Andrea Manfrin, and I'm the Deputy Director of Clinical Investigations and Trial on the MHRA, and I joined the MHRA in June 2023. So if I can start straight away with my slide, what I'm going to do in the next 6 or 7 minutes, I'm going to take you through a journey where I'm going to talk a bit about the past, the present, and what is coming in the future for the MHRA and the UK clinical research environment as well. So if I can go to my first slide, as you can see, there is a graph, and there are two axes, actually three axes. So on the left-hand side, we have the number of clinical trial. On the right axis, we have the number of days, and on the bottom axis, which is the x-axis, we have the years. We have two lines. The green line is the total number of clinical trials, and the red line is showing the average assessment time for the clinical trial. So here we have a picture that is going from 2021 to 2025. Why is important this period? Because during this period, the MHRA went through different processes. So as you can see, we went through being a regulator, part of the big organization, which was the European organization. Then we developed a system that allowed us to standing alone. And then we went through the COVID. And then during the COVID, we had an issue that we call the backlog. And if you see in 2023, we had the peak on number of clinical trials that were not assessed, and they were in the backlog, 950 actually. And the time to clear each one of them was 91 days on average. So the MHRA deployed a lot of people, and then we received support from the government, and we managed to clear the backlog. And in 2024, we reinstated, between the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024, the number of clinical trials picked up again. And as you can see, the most important thing is that the average time for the assessment went down quite sharply. We reinstated our statutory timeline in September 2023, and as you can see, we delivered the statutory commitment for the first review, which is within 30 calendar days, within 28 days. What is really, really important is that the green line is showing that the number of clinical trials, apart from the backlog, is going up. And if you see the number of clinical trial initial we received in 2024 compared to 25, is showing that there is an increase, a percentage of increase of 6%. That means that there is a positive uptake in this direction. In order to fix this problem, so the backlog, we introduced a lot of innovative approaches. The risk proportionate approach, we streamlined the processes, and now we can say that we are always delivering our activities within the statutory timeline, and we published peer review papers that are demonstrating that 99% actually of the clinical trial initial are delivered within the statutory timeline, and 99.9% of the clinical trial amendments are delivered on the statutory timeline. So, having addressed the issue of the backlog and the statutory timeline, we are moving now into the introduction of innovative approaches. So if I can get my next slide, please. So here we are introducing now, we have already started to introduce the return to the 14 days for the first review for some phase 1 clinical trial. This is a pilot stage that we are opening now, and we are committed to introduce this program following a stepwise approach. That means that by the end of 2026, so Q4 2026, phase 1 clinical trial that are satisfying the condition according to the entry criteria will be assessed within 14 days, plus 1 day for the validation. Another very important innovation that we are introducing right now, which is at the end of April 2026, on the 28th of April, is the new clinical trial regulation. And there are different innovations, but probably the most important one, or the pivotal one, will be the notifiable trial. That means that some clinical trial initial and some clinical trial amendment will be notified to us, which means that they will be approved in within 14 calendar days. So a very fast approval if the submission satisfies the criteria that are laid in the regulation and in the guidance. This will enable us to shift our activity or part of our activity upfront, and therefore provide more upstream advice to the sponsor that they are requesting more and more advice, because clinical trials are becoming more complex, and therefore, in order to address the complexity, we realize that if we can provide more upstream advice, this will enable better submission. The third element, which is an important element, is that we are already receiving and accepting some clinical trials that are supported also by in silico technology. But we are also committed to develop a team of people specialized and specially skilled and trained in assessment of in silico technology within our unit. Therefore, we are expecting that the submission of clinical trials supported by in silico data will grow in the next future. If I can get to my next slide, please. So these are the innovations that we are introducing. Before touching on this one, I would like to create a bridge between the previous slide and this slide. During the summer 2025, we launched a new approach to support our activity within the clinical trial unit. And in particular, we developed 2 bespoke AI tools that are aiming to enhance our activity and potentially saving time to our assessor. And we are continuing this development of the AI tool, and we learn a lot from this journey. And now we are going to develop 3 different AI tools that will be deployed in the near future. The first one is the scientific advice drafting assistant. We know that scientific advice is really, really valuable, and is really valued by the sponsor. And during the summer 2025, we had an increase of 75% of the scientific advice provided to the sponsor. On average, the number of scientific advice that the MHRA is provided to sponsor on a yearly basis is about 300. And 45% of this scientific advice is led by the clinical trials in collaboration with the other unit, of course. So, so far we are providing scientific advice in a written format because it's more efficient for us. But we are willing to expand even more and to become faster in terms of preparing the scientific advice material, and therefore enabling us to use an AI assistant that support the medical assessor, the clinical assessor, and the pharmaceutical assessor in drafting the scientific advice meeting notes will be very, very important. And this will enable us to become more efficient and to improve our consistency across the different disciplines as well. The second AI tool that we are aiming to develop and deploy in the near future is the clinical trial protocol checker. This will be a very important tool for the sponsor because the idea is that the sponsor will upload their protocol on the MHRA website, and this protocol checker will highlight straight away the majority of the potential GNA before submission. Therefore, the sponsor will be allowed to address all this GNA and to submit the protocol, which will be stronger and therefore potentially, I'm not saying GNA free, but with very little GNA. And the third is the assessment template pre-populator, which is this one. So at the moment, our assessors, they are reviewing all the material that is belonging to the submission package, and they are drafting the protocols. And therefore, they are typing pretty much. And the idea is to create a system that will enable the pre-population of the assessment template for the different disciplines. So then the assessor will have more time to conduct the analytical screening on the information, and therefore will have more time for the decision making. So in a nutshell, these three tools will optimize the system, will reduce the time spent for routine activities, and will allow the assessor to spend more time on the decision making process and the critical element of the analysis of the submission. This will in some way align very well with the strategy of the agency, where we are putting more AI in terms of supporting our activity, but we always want to have the human in the loop. And by doing this, the idea is that we can provide more time to the assessor to provide upstream advice before submission to get better trial and less GNA. And that's my last slide. And thank you so much for listening. And I'm happy to take any question at the end.
Thank you, Andrea. Really great stuff. We already have some great questions coming in, and I'll put them to you after the session. So thank you for that. It's clear and obvious that MHRA made some really massive strides. To share more on what that means from an industry perspective, I'm delighted to introduce Gronya Burley, Director of Clinical Operations at Parexel. We've worked with Gronya for many, many years in the Parexel team very successfully, and she has a fantastic insight of, particularly from the lens on from a UK perspective, on how sponsors are thinking about the UK and how that's evolved over time. Gronya's got over 25 years clinical research experience, both in pharma and CROs, and as country head responsible for collaboration with sponsors on feasibility, startup and monitoring activities, but fundamentally is a real consultant to Parexel and sponsors on how the UK can really perform. So, Gronya, I'd like to invite you, please, to share your insights on how things have been evolving recently.
Okay, thank you very much, Stuart. Okay, see the slides. Thank you. So I'm going to share a brief overview of key highlights and advantages of bringing clinical research to the UK. So if you go to the next slide, please. So really, this is just a snapshot. So really just highlighting an overview of some of the successes that we have here in the UK. So firstly, just to highlight that we have deep pools of highly experienced clinical trial sites. We have extensive networks spanning all therapy areas and trial phases. We have access to world-leading academic institutions and renowned key opinion leaders, as well as established site management organizations and private research facilities. We've also have a leading hub for early phase first-in-human studies. So we have robust infrastructure supporting complex phase 1 studies, and also our UK clinical research facility networks, both public and private. We also specialise in first-in-human capabilities and safety monitoring expertise. And as you all know, we have a very high standard of NHS care. So we have well-managed patient populations, widely available reimbursement, and also access to diverse patient demographics, including both treatment experienced and treatment naive cohorts. And I'm sure you all know, currently we have many progressive government initiatives ongoing, and there's a huge commitment to strengthen UK as a global clinical research destination. The new UK Clinical Trial Directive, which we've already heard about, coming effective 28th of April, is also designed to accelerate study startup timelines and reduce administrative burden. Also, we have access to faster approval timelines with expedited ethics and regulatory review process, as we just heard, enabling quicker site activation. So I wanted to take a few moments really to talk about some of those progressive government initiatives. I mean, there's a lot of work going on in this space now, and you're probably aware that the NIHR Industry Hub also offers a single national pathway where commercial trials are prioritised. And also the NIHR have several goals that have been implemented. One of those is actually doubling enrolment in UK clinical trials by 2028. And if you think that one patient equates to about £28,000, this is having a huge, or will have a huge impact on revenue, as well as bringing research to patients. We also have the goal to dose the first patient within 150 days of regulatory submission, and then the goal is to beat that afterwards. We have another goal to improve predictability of study startup and enrolment. So I think this is absolutely key, because I think in the UK we still see a lot of unpredictability in terms of our delivery and our performance. So we have some sites achieving what they say they will achieve and others not. So the predictability for our sponsors is really critical. The NIHR also are enabling sponsors during the feasibility process, so providing more support in that space. We're also trying to reduce non-enrolling sites, but also increase and prioritize the naive research sites. And then finally, definitely there is more focus in terms of KPIs, measuring successes within the NIHR. So there's definitely more of a commercial focus, which has been really positive as well. And then finally, the UK is a key commercial market for our sponsors. So we often have the UK mandated on our country lists, but this is often because we have great key opinion leaders, and the sponsors want to work with these same sites and key opinion leaders. So that's all great, but obviously sometimes we go to the same sites and they're very saturated, and often we're not delivering in what is expected. So that can be a challenge. So if you go to the next slide. So this slide is just showing a pie chart of the UK participation in clinical trials by therapy area over the last 5 years. So you can see, we do very well in oncology, autoimmune disease, and CNS. But I think we do struggle in areas where we have good standard of care, we have readily available biologics, or maybe challenges as well where we have placebo-controlled trials with washout periods, where I think patients just find them not attractive, especially when they may be thinking that they're going to have flare-ups and going through these placebo or washout periods. We also do very well in GLP-1 trials and also vaccine trials. And again, as we've seen from the previous presentation, we really do well in phase 1 studies. And I think with the new regulations, this will improve further and give us more opportunity for that product development as well. So if we go to the next slide. So this one's just showing a nice graph of where the UK is sitting amongst the other countries in terms of UK enrolment in clinical trials. So you can see that we're sitting as a kind of median country, but actually we are second behind Poland if we just look at Europe. However, you can see there that we've got significant contributions from our infectious disease and vaccine studies. So I think without that contribution, we would be much lower on this list. So I think definitely more, more focus here on how we can improve our patient recruitment. And you can see as well that, we're really significantly contributing in terms of patients per site per month within CNS and also ophthalmology. And if you go to the next slide, please. So now I just wanted to share with you some positive operational trends. So these are also, at national level, but personally, I'm also seeing some of these within our own organization. So you can see here, we've had really impressive first patient achievements. So the UK has secured 24 global firsts and 45 European firsts in 2025-26, demonstrating competitive speed to patient advantages. We've definitely seen shortened NCVR timelines. So this has really led to faster SIVs and site activation. We still see private sites coming in much, much quicker, but I think the fact that we're seeing a more consistent, faster turnaround of NCVR is really positive as well. We're seeing successful deployment of the commercial research delivery centres. So really growing evidence that the CRDCs are being utilised. They're including innovative integration of primary care settings as well. I think what we need to do in the UK is to really make sure that we are educating very simply to our global sponsors, because we have very, new models, a lot of acronyms within the UK, and I think sometimes we can be perceived as quite complex to work with. So I think one of our challenges now is to try and really demonstrate and showcase that the CRDCs are really giving us positive results. So, at the moment we are seeing this, but it's early days. And I think it's, the more data that comes, the more evidence we will have to provide to our sponsors. We also see more diversified site portfolios, so expansion beyond the traditional hospital setting to include community-based and primary care sites as well. So again, I think when we're looking at these models, some global sponsors can be quite hesitant where they've not used this model before, they don't have data. We need to really build trust. But in the UK, we have seen successful studies using old people homes, pharmacies, even the mobile units, where we're trying to bring research to patients in the community. And then finally, definitely I have seen an improved research delivery network partnership. So we see really an enhanced collaboration between the RDNs, sponsors and CROs, and definitely helping us to deliver operational efficiencies. So all of these ongoing initiatives are really helping to sort of educate sponsors, tell them about UK changes in our regulations, and really, help them understand our operational capabilities to make the UK a country of choice. And then really, I just wanted to sort of finish to say there is so much work to do. We've got a lot to do, but there is a lot going on as well. So really, we would just want to make sure that we're really highlighting all of these opportunities and really showcasing. And I think we just need to do a better job at publicizing ourselves, showcasing, successful stories, and really, make sure that we just advertise the UK as much as possible. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Gráinne, for that. Sounds like there's still some way to go, but some really important advances there. So, and last but not least, we're going to hear from Amy Barrett. Amy's Associate Director in the Business Development team at Panthera. But Amy's been with Panthera for about a year, but has a unique perspective, having spent her early career as a nurse and researcher in the NHS, followed by 10 years of leadership in the NIHR, particularly in the Northwest, before joining us last year. Amy's going to share how the delivery landscape looks sort of from the coalface, and how the various delivery models in the UK can work closely to ensure that we maintain our momentum together. So, Amy, over to you, and I'll let you go.
Thanks so much, Stu. So yeah, as Stu said, I'm going to be talking around the UK trial delivery and performance, particularly around the NHS and SMOs as well. Thank you so much for my slides. So yes, we know that both the NHS and SMOs do deliver commercial research. The NHS tend to deliver the more intense and complex studies, and that's particularly because they've got the specialist units and key opinion leaders, as Grania mentioned before. But we also do have some strong private sites that deliver phase 1 trials as well. But for SMOs like Panthera, we typically deliver between phase 2 and phase 4, and that's because we've got the outreach into the community. Next slide, please. So SMOs, what are we good at? Where are our strengths? So to start with, startup, we are strong, we are very fast. And that's because we've got no NHS approval, but we've also got dedicated teams that work on specific trials to make sure that we are efficient in getting the study up and running as quickly as we possibly can. We know that the NIHR do have the 150-day KPI around startup, which is brilliant for the UK, and we absolutely welcome. SMOs have a shorter time. We at Panthera, we target around 50 days, particularly around startup. That means that we tend to get either the first in the UK patient in or sometimes global as well. We do have experienced trial staff. So we have full-time doctors, nurses, CTAs, all site delivery staff to make sure that we deliver well. And delivery for us is really important to meet that industry expectation, right from feasibility, making sure that we're putting forward robust feasibilities, ambitious numbers in terms of recruitment, but it's not just about the performance and the delivery that's important to us, but it's also about the quality of the data that we provide and also retaining those patients into trials. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of a few trials that Panthera have run, and I'm sure there's other SMOs and organisations within the NHS that have similar data. So we tend to get either the first patient in the UK or even global, and also top recruiting sites in the UK and global. And I think it's really important to highlight here that, as Grania said, we should be showcasing this data a little bit more, and we should be using all of our organisational data to put the UK on the map and actually get that repeat business back into the UK. Next slide, please. So it's important to recognise that the NHS do play a huge contribution into the delivery of research in the UK. We know pathways have been changing over the last few years and will continue to change as well. There has been a shift from the hospital setting into the community. We know, for example, in GP practices, as per NIHR data, that 25% are recruiting into trials, which is around 1,600 GP practices in England. However, this doesn't mean it's solely commercial. This does include academic research as well. So this is the gap for SMOs to really exceed in the delivery because they've got the outreach into the community. Next slide, please. So a little bit of data on the ABPI. We know that over the last couple of years, commercial trials have been increasing in the UK in phase 1 to 3, which is brilliant news for the UK in general. We know that from the global clinical market that this will be the case for probably predictions around 5 years plus. So it's important that as a UK, we get ready for these trials that are potentially coming to the UK. Next slide, please. So again, on the ABPI data, we've just mentioned that the number of trials have increased and we intend it will be that way for the next 5 years plus. But looking at the data from the ABPI, there has been a decrease in the number of patients that have been recruited into trials over the last few years. However, this data is only and solely data from the NHS. If you look at Panthera recruitment for 425, we've recruited over 2,000 patients into commercial research. But actually, there's 9 other SMOs in the UK as well. And if you put all of the data together, we would be more attractive to our industry partners on a global level to get that repeat business and more business into the UK. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to end on a success trial that I know we've all had in our organisations, but this was a study that we've been working with one of our industry strategic partners. It was an LPA study, which patients are predominantly sat in primary care in the community. We initially started with 3 sites on this study, but we exceeded all expectations in terms of numbers of recruits. And it was requested that an additional 3 sites were adding on. So we had 6 sites in the end. Just to add, we had 11 non-Panthera sites. These were secondary care NHS sites. I just wanted to highlight at this point that it's about study placement. These patients were seen in the community. They sat in the community. And that means that, you know, we should be really looking at pathways and mapping out the whole of the population and understanding where studies are best to be placed, because this could have been these patients could have been recruited in the community more than what they were in secondary care. So just, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy, for that. And please do keep your questions coming in. I've got quite a few to get through. But Amy, thanks for that. We, I see the same thing with the types of trials that the SMOs are great at aren't necessarily the types of trials that secondary care hospitals are great at. And I think it's really important that we work together with industry and with our NIHR colleagues and NHS colleagues to look at where the best placement could be. So I'm going to get started on the Q&A. I'm going to revert back to Andrea with a question from one of our audience members. I'll read it out here. It's great to see AI being used to make submissions and approvals more efficient. Can you outline when you think we'll start to yield results from this, and when will we see the first benefits in the submission process or the approval timeline?
So we started this process of developing the AI tool back in 2025. We started in 2024 and completed in 2025. So we have 2 AI tools now. One is fully functional and the other one requires a few more iteration for the simple reason that they are bespoke tools. So we couldn't find anything off the shelf, and therefore we need to develop them from scratch. And that took a lot of time for us. And we can share a paper that we published because we are very transparent. We explained what we did and how we did it. The expectation is that AI tool will potentially start to provide a very tangible support to our teams towards mid to 2026 and the 2026, because we are testing them. But one of the 2 tools is already, I would say, kind of a standard approach that our assessors are using. In terms of reducing the timeline, we are aiming that the timeline will be reduced further, and the reduction will be not just due to the AI tool, but to the fact that we are introducing the notifiable trials. And let me explain this. We model some kind of data, and we are expecting that the potential for the notifiable trial will be about 20% for the clinical trial initial, and 20% for the clinical trial amendments that in the future will be called modification. Therefore, there is a synergic combination between notifiable trial, the use of AI, the development of further AI tools. So it's not just one tool per se. There are multiple elements, and we are also expanding the teams, in the different discipline, in the medical discipline, in the pharmaceutical discipline, and in the non-toxicology discipline as well. So I wouldn't say that there is only one driver for the acceleration. There are many drivers that are contributing together.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Andrea. Another question from one of our audience members, Gronya. I'll direct this one to you, maybe. Would be interested to hear thoughts on the length of time C&C assessments, which is delaying site startup, with some sites taking beyond 2 months. I think it's sort of a question and a comment there, but would you like to just describe how you see it from your side, please, Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is coming back to the whole, goal about the predictability, because at the moment, we do see that we've got some really great sites, great resources, private sites and NHS sites that are really delivering, and they're delivering what they say they can do and delivering on time. Whereas others, we are seeing those big bottlenecks, and it comes back down to, sometimes we're going back to the same sites, as I mentioned, the same key opinion leaders, and we've got some sites that are just saturated and they don't have the capacity and capability, but that's not really being flagged until we're quite long into a process. So this is actually costing us a lot of money, and we get to the last minute and we're delaying that first patient in. So really, hopefully, with all of these initiatives and supports from NIHR, RDN, these bottlenecks will improve, because it's that reliability. We need to have consistency across all of the sites, and really start using more newer sites as well. And that is challenging because some sponsors don't want to take that risk. So it's again about educating, about showcasing what we can do, and really, talking with sponsors, making us, I guess, that changing that perception that we are a bit easier to work with. Sometimes we are seen as very complex as well. So don't know if that answered the question, but it's kind of added to the comments.
Thanks, Grania. Yeah, I think we, from a Panthera perspective, industry perspective, I think we identify that sometimes the things are really hard, much harder to get approvals through. The systems and NHS trusts are large, and when they're on studies, they do have a massive contribution. So if we, as an SMO or in the CRDCs, can help get that early stage of a trial really rolling quickly, then as a team, as a UK population of sites, we can then add lots more patients and momentum from sites coming slightly later in. We can still make a massive contribution, but yeah, it would be great to see those timelines reduce even further. One I'll sort of direct to you, Amy, if we can move on. There's a sort of long question here. So good overview. One of the challenges to get NHS to see the SMO world as part of the wider ecosystem to support bringing more opportunities to patients, not a threat, but a collaborative partner to maximise the UK's patient potential contribution to global trials while addressing the current capacity challenges in the NHS. What do you think we can do to encourage greater collaboration between the NHS and SMOs to benefit UK PLC?
Absolutely. I think it's a really good question, actually. And I think, there is that education piece, isn't there, around, well, what do SMOs do? And there's always the question is, they take all the NHS patients. And actually, how it works is that SMOs do deliver, the phase 2 to 3 to 4 patients out into the community. And actually, when you think about it, it's not so much a competition. It's more about, well, these patients have the choice whether they go to a Panthera site to the research trial there, or whether they go down the road to the local university hospital. And I think that's sometimes that what we do forget is this is about the patient. It's up to the patient where they go, and it doesn't matter about whether it's being taken part in the private sector or within the hospital sector, the NHS.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And I'd probably highlight we've got some really great examples, albeit not enough, of instances where we at Panthera, and I know some of our counterparts in other SMOs in the UK, work very, very closely with NHS investigators who bring a key speciality to a trial, but don't necessarily have the resources to be able to kind of wrap around that knowledge and expertise. And we've been able to work with some fantastic investigators in hepatology, in neurology, to be able to run trials that aren't traditionally the sort of bread and butter of your SMO, but working together, we can actually get the best of both environments where that capacity is available in the private setting, and utilizing the experience and skills and actually patient population as well in more specialist areas to work together. And I think if we can provide more opportunities for investigators to know that resource is available should they have challenges around their trial, then we should open up that resource more. And Amy and I have also had some really encouraging dialogue with NIHR leadership recently to see if we can unlock those opportunities a little bit further. So we'd love to do more of that. And I think that will utilize our overall capacity much better. And these CDRCs, again, we really welcome those, but it is a new initiative, and I think we've got to give them time, a little bit of time, to really establish themselves and become part of the landscape. And then we can all work together better. So I hope that answers the sort of question there. A sort of quite a functional question back to you, Andrea. On your nice graph earlier, one of our audience asking, can you clarify what proportion of CTs in this graph are from industry? I know the ABPI one from Amy showed a bit of that, but could you help there?
Sure. So we analyzed the number of clinical trials that we received between February 2019 and October 2023, so over 4,600. And the proportion is that 85% of the clinical trial submission are commercially driven and 15% non-commercially driven. And we can see this pattern in 2025 as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I've got a question that was pre-asked before the meeting from Lord O'Shaughnessy or his team. I'm going to ask maybe Andrea and Gráinne maybe opinions on this. So countries such as Spain, Australia, and obviously China are dominating early phase research. Do you still think there's a space for the UK in phase 1, or should we be focusing on later phase trials?
I mean, maybe I can just start, because I think in my slides, I think, I think we have a strong, success really in terms of phase 1 trials. So yes, there's other countries also doing that very well. But, from my perspective, we do still see a lot of new business for phase 1 trials coming to the UK. And maybe, Andrea, you can probably add, because of now with the changes in the regulation and approval process, this will also enhance it, but I'll let you comment as well.
Much.
Oh, you're on mute, Andrea.
Is it working now? Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry about that. So thank you very much for this, but if I can refer to the information that I provided before, in this analysis, we highlighted the fact that 12.5% of all the submissions were first in human. So 1 every 9 trial is a first in human. Therefore, I would say is a clear demonstration that the UK is a research powerhouse, because first in human are the most innovative medications that are bringing potentially to the market tomorrow. And that's the first one. And the second point is that we are putting the second is notification is my line.
I think we're losing you a little bit there, Andrea. I'll
Can you hear me?
We can now, yes, but we maybe direct the question elsewhere. Andrea, your connection's a little bit off. Maybe Gráinne, can I?
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, can I kind of follow up with a different question then for you on the spot again? How is the UK perceived by sponsors versus the UK and North America? But crucially, how has it changed over the last 2 years? Has there been any specific changes in the last 2 years that you've noticed?
In terms of sponsor perception, did you say?
Yes, sponsor perception indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so I do think that it's definitely improving. We're still seeing that, regular business is coming to the UK, but I think we still need to work hard to improve that perception that we can be seen as quite complex. And yeah, just I guess sometimes slower than other countries. So sponsors are really looking at that speed, startup timelines, and also that reliability in terms of patient enrollment. So I think it comes back to that predictability. So I think in terms of our, UK new regulations and what you're hearing from Andrea in terms of MHRA approvals versus all of the work that's happening from the government initiatives, I think definitely we are seeing things improving. But again, it will take some time.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Gráinne, for that. I don't know, Andrea, if we can hear from you again on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, I was just saying that, from the analysis that we did, is very clear that there is 1 in 9 clinical trial submission that is involved in a first in human, so very innovative trial, early stage. And the second point is that 14 days will enable us to become more, let's say, use the word competitive, even though I don't like to use this word, but let's say faster in terms of approval timeline for the phase 1, for some phase 1 clinical trial by the end of this year. The notification will allow us to accelerate the trial that are satisfying the criteria for the notification, that are phase agnostic. And the same will apply for the amendments that will be called modification in the future. To add to this, we are also introducing our research program that will be potentially delivered by the end of the year, that are always going the same direction to facilitate the uptake and reduce the burden for the sponsor in terms of clinical trial application as well. We are keep streamlined. We are always looking at doing things in a better way, more agile way. So it's an ongoing process for us. It's not done and dusted.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Amy, perhaps I can direct this one to you. When you're speaking with sponsors, are they generally aware that the UK now has a growing SMO sector, or is it still quite hidden?
I think it's, when we speak to them, of course, we've got that engagement. But I think from data that is provided by other organisations, that our data is hidden. So as we said before with the ABPI data and, other NIHR data, of course, it's solely NHS data that is provided. However, as I mentioned before, if you did have the SMO data in with that, the UK would look much more attractive if you included all SMO data.
Thank you. I agree. Maybe this is it's quite an interesting question. I'll ask anybody who wants to comment. Maybe Andrea is first. So Keir Starmer may be the first Prime Minister to ever mention clinical trials from a podium. What specific significance does this have? And are you feeling that? I'll add a bit from my perspective. Is that something that from your perspective, you're also feeling that sort of positive pressure from government to make significant improvements on a regulatory side?
Well, I would say yes, for sure, because I think that we are working very, very close with the government. I mean, the CEO and the senior team, and the government is very, very supporting and is enabling us to expand and to introduce new avenues and new way of doing things. So I do believe that there is a great synergies between the government and us as well.
Thank you. I don't know, Gráinne, if there's any.
Yeah, I was gonna add. I mean, it's great, really, because obviously, I think since COVID, all of a sudden through that COVID period, the members of the public became much more aware about clinical trials, and then I think it kind of almost drifted off a little bit. So I think hearing Keir Starmer, stand up and support this, is really positive, because I think there definitely needs to be more done to bring knowledge and experience to the general public, because I think we still only probably have about 1% of the population in the UK that actually are participating in clinical trials, and sometimes it's just it needs to have more publicity. So I think in terms of our patient recruitment, which we've got real big opportunities to improve that by really collaborating with all of the stakeholders. So the government working closely with, the key opinion leaders, NIHR, but also NHS and private sites. So, so I think it is very positive.
Thanks, Gráinne. Amy, anything?
Not really. I just think, obviously, it's as Gráinne said, it's great to have that engagement for patient recruitment, but actually kind of engaging with doctors and getting kind of NHS and having that kind of person talking about clinical trials will really kind of spark conversations within organisations as well.
Great, thank you. I'll got a couple more, and I think we'll probably try to wrap up. One question: how can we dispel, or maybe I'll rephrase it slightly. What are the myths that are sometimes held by global industry sponsors, and how can we do better to dispel some of those myths that global industry partners might have on the UK? I might come back to you first, Gráinne, on that.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I think, again, what I've said before is that, we're not very good at sort of publicizing ourselves and actually demonstrating our capabilities. So I think we still need to do a better job at really showcasing where, we've had these key successes, and also educating global sponsors. Because, in the day-to-day operations, that can be quite challenging, even when we try and talk to sponsors about the CDRCs, or, as you say, the sort of SMO networks. Sometimes, not all are familiar, and I think there's always that risk that they don't really know. And unless we've got data to demonstrate that, we can deliver, we can do it predictably, we've got speed, we've got quality, it still remains quite challenging. So I think we still need to be better at showcasing ourselves and really, publicizing, what we can do to, I think, raise that awareness.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes we're a bit British about marketing ourselves to the world, how brilliant some of the innovations we have here. And I think more we can do around that, whether it's data or indeed publications. I think I know, Andrea, you're sharing something that shows some of that significant progress, and we'll share that link with everybody in the audience after the session today. I am going to start wrapping up. I want to give everybody just a little bit of time before the hour. I thank you to those people who asked those questions. I think it sparked a really interesting debate there. But most of all, I want to thank our panelists today, Professor Manfrin, Gráinne, Amy. Really great insights from very different lenses on the UK industry. And I think there's so much great stuff out there. I mean, my conclusion is that we just need to tell more people about how great we are, and we need to work better together. And I think if we can, they're quite trite statements, but they're things that if we keep doing that, we'll keep improving and start bringing more and more work to the UK. With that, I also want to thank all of the people who joined us today for the session. I know everybody's busy, and taking that hour out of your Friday afternoon to help join us and give us those questions has been really, really great. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Guys, thank you again so much for helping us with this. It's been great preparing for it, and also great listening to your insights. With that, I'm going to wrap up the session and say thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.